All right, so today we have domain and range of continuous functions. And so we're going to be learning about interval notation. So it is something new. It is super exciting. It's going to be also very easy. So let's first talk about what a continuous function is. So a continuous function is just simply a graph line. It's not going to have, we're actually going to talk about one that's got like a little jump in it, but it is a graph line. It's not individual points. We call those discrete. So this is a continuous graphed line. And we notate domain and range using inequality notation up until today. After today, we're going to learn a different way. Or since today, we're going to learn a different way. So remember, domain you go from left to right. Range you go from low to high. Remember, I always say start with your L's. So you start with your left and you start with your low. So start with your L's. And the inequality notation that we use is always going to be the less than symbol. Okay, so you make your less than with your left hand, so less than. So these are the two examples that are in your notes. So when I look at this one that's on the left, how far left is that going? I have an arrow. So an arrow means that it's going to keep going, and it's going to keep going in the negative direction. So that means it's going to go to negative infinity. And then how far right is it's going? It's going to 2. So the 2, what's also important about the 2 is open circle. Open circle means that it's not equal to, and so it's not going to get a line. Okay, and infinities never get lines. Okay, so negative infinity less than x less than 2. It's everything in between negative infinity and 2. Now range, you're going from low to high. So how low are we going is 0. How high are we going? Now it's got one side that's going to 4, but if you look, it's going to keep going on the other side. It's as high as the whole function goes. The whole function goes to infinity. So that is going from 0 to infinity. We use y this time because it's range. 0 is going to get a line because it's on the line. If it's on the line, it gets a line. So 0 has equal to on it, and then infinities never get lines. All right, so that's the first one. Now this next graph has this really interesting little jump in it. So let's talk about that little jump, especially when we're talking about domain. It's not going to affect range so much, but it's definitely going to affect domain. So let's talk about domain. How far left and how far right are we going? So how far left are we going? I have an arrow, so that means I'm going to negative infinity. But now let's look at how this graph is going. So I'm going and I'm stopping. I'm stopping with an open dot, so that means it's equal to. I'm jumping straight up, and then it's the exact same value. So at 0, it is equal to 0. And then at 0, it's picking right back up at like 0.11 or 0.00001, and then going to infinity. So there is no jump there. So this domain is all real numbers. Negative infinity, because it's going forever left. It's also going forever right. So negative infinity to positive infinity, which you can also write as the little fancy r, all real numbers. Now your range, when you go from low to high, how low are you going? You're going to 2. Again, there is that gap, but you can see that those gaps really do kind of overlap in this case. So how low are you going to 2? How tall are you going to 2? And so you're going from negative 2 less than or equal to y less than or equal to 2. Because both of those are on lines, they get lines, and so they are equal to. So that is inequality notation. That is you should have learned that in Algebra 1. Quick little piece about inequality notation. But now let's talk about interval notation. Interval notation, you've got two types of intervals. You have a closed interval, which means you have a closed dot. It means that it's including that, or it's equal to. Your open intervals are everything opposite of that. It's an open dot. It's excluding that value, meaning it's not equal to. So with interval notation, you're going to be using parentheses and brackets instead of inequalities. So when do you use parentheses or when do you use brackets? You use brackets when you have a closed dot. When you have a closed dot, when it's equal to that value, or if you're looking at the inequalities, if that inequality has a line, it gets a bracket. When do you use parentheses? If it is an open dot, if your inequalities don't have lines. you will use parentheses. A way a student of mine helped remember it many years ago, if you make an open dot and you split it, it looks like parentheses. So if you have an open dot, then that's when you use parentheses. And then also remember, infinities would always get no lines, and no lines means parentheses. So infinities are always going to get parentheses, negative infinity and positive infinity. They're always going to get parentheses and never brackets. So this one is from your notes. So how far left and how far right does this go? How far left does this go? -6. How far right does it go? +6. Closed dot, closed dot. They both get brackets. -6 to 6, brackets on both sides. Really easy, right? Range, low to high. How low does this go? -1. How high does this go? 6. Closed dot, closed dot. They're not always the endpoints. It's also important to realize that endpoint is not how high or how low it goes. It is how far left and right, but it's not how high and how low it goes. So you've got to really just go with how tall is it and how low does it go. So this one is this is -1 to 6. Now let's look at this one also from your notes. How far left does it go? -3. How far right does it go? 9. -3 to 9. And then let's talk about, why does 9 get a parenthesis? 9 gets a parenthesis because it is an open dot. Open dot means it's not equal to, so if it's not equal to, it gets a parenthesis. Now range, how low does this go? It goes as low as -7. How tall does it go? -3. -7 gets a bracket because it's equal to. -3 gets a parenthesis because it's not equal to. It's an open dot, so it's not equal to. All right, super easy, right? If it's open, it gets a parenthesis, closed gets a bracket. It's that easy. Now let's talk about one that might be a little weird. So let's look at this one. I've got arrows on both sides. Arrows on both sides, now this one's not in your notes, but this is just to kind of keep an eye out for. I've got arrows on both sides, which means it does not mean it's stopping. Okay? It does not mean it's stopping at -3 and 3. That would be, or -4 and 4. That would be wrong. Don't do that. It is going forever left and forever right. So this is all real numbers. And we don't write you can, but most of us math teachers don't want all real numbers when we're doing interval notation. We want negative infinity to positive infinity. And range, low to high. How low does it go? It goes as low as 0. And it goes as tall as infinity. So that's going to get 0 with a bracket because it's equal to. It's on the line. If it's on the line, it gets a line. If it gets a line, it gets a bracket. Plus brackets look like lines. It's also kind of how I think about brackets. And then infinity goes as tall as infinity, and infinities never get brackets. Infinities always get parentheses. And that is domain and range with interval notation.